and welcome to River City's Community Access Media. This is a new edition of Get to Know Your City. I'm your host, Milt Van Natta, and today I'll be visiting with one of the candidates for District 1 Alderperson in Wisconsin Rapids. Our guest is Joe Zurfluh. Joe, welcome to our program today.
Thank
you. Introduce yourself to our viewers and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, my name is Joe Zurfluh. A lot of people refer to me as Junior, not to be confused with my father, of course. But I was born and raised right here in Southwood County, grew up in Port Edwards. I was in the Army for 3 years. Afterwards, I moved to the city, and I've been living in the same house on the west side now for about 10 years.
Tell us. Go ahead, please.
I'm sorry.
Please.
I'm also currently an investigator with the local sheriff's department. So that's really.
Talk to us about the process, the decision-making process you went through to make this run for the city council. What motivated you to jump into the race?
Well, actually, about 5 years ago, I thought about it when our former alderman Whirl was elected, I think, for his first time. And local government has always interested me, obviously. You know, being in law enforcement, I get one aspect of it. But I've always been interested in the decision-making that goes on in running a municipality. And this time around, following former Alderman Whirl's resignation, I thought this would be a good time to put my name in the hat, and see if the voters are up to elect me or not.
Now, how do you see the role of an alderperson? Tell us the job description, if you will, as you perceive it.
My perception of an alderperson, especially on the city level, you are kind of in control, not kind of, you are in control of how the city spends money. You make the decision on what projects would be beneficial, what projects would not be beneficial. There are a lot of issues currently. There's two sides to every issue, of course. People have differing opinions.
Yeah.
I think the alderman position is one where you need to evaluate, you know, is this going to be a good move for the city going forward, or is this something we should either not consider or hold off on considering?
And as we visit with Joe over the course of this program, we're going to start on the city-wide level and ask him some questions about those projects within the city that affect all of us on a pretty much equal basis. And then we'll go down into District 1 and we'll get specific about things there. So Joe, just give us an evaluation from your perspective of how city government is doing business currently.
Right now, I think the alderman and the mayor, they seem to work pretty well together. There's some issues where watching the meetings, there's obviously different opinions among alderpersons,
Sure.
but they seem to hold themselves with dignity, and they seem to treat each other pretty well.
Okay, so let's dig in a little bit now. One of the topics getting a lot of headlines is a pool project in the community. Just tell us where you stand on that and how you look at that issue as it rests right now.
Right now, the specific pool that I have heard of recently would be the Mead Pool. It's in need of repair and renovation. I would support keeping that pool up and running. It's a great place, especially for youth, to spend time, especially obviously during the summer when there's no school. Maybe the parents are working and there's a babysitter. It's a good place to take them so they can unwind and spend some constructive time as opposed to finding other things to do that maybe wouldn't be quite as good.
So that would be a fairly high-level priority for you to get that pool repaired, renovated, and operational.
Yes, that's a fair assessment. I obviously wouldn't be in favor of scrapping, a necessary project, something that the city really needs. But I think the pool renovation is up there pretty high.
Okay. Well, I recall we're talking now back in to the 1980s. But Joe, I recall when Consolidated Papers was first sold, and ever since then, we're talking now for some 30 years, one of the hot topics in our community has been economic development, diversify the job base here in our community. What can be done on the city level to create jobs in our community? Is there something that's not being done that needs to? Just talk to us about that whole issue, because it's as important as any you'll face.
Absolutely. In the 80s, I was born. So I don't remember Consolidated being sold, but I do very vividly remember when the Domtar Mill in Port Edwards closed, and how the residents there were worried, about what that could mean for the village. I think economic development is probably one of the number one priorities for our city.
Yeah.
As an alderman, and as I would hope our current aldermen also feel, you need to be open to bringing industry in, not just maybe fast food joints or commercial, commercial business. Small business, of course, is very good. Local owners, things like that, I think you should be very open to, and basically just really accepting that having these industries come into town is a long-term benefit. People need working jobs. I think we've heard, this on the national level. We've heard it on the state level. We've heard it on local levels at municipalities all over the place. So basically just being open to that, not resisting change so much, perhaps.
Do you think that's been the case at times, that we have resisted change a little bit and maybe not been as open as we need to be in these days and times?
I think there's some of that, certainly. I can't say how much. I don't have any radical ideas, of course. I consider myself a reasonable person, and that's how I would make decisions. But I think it's somewhat human nature that people, they fall in a comfort zone, and it's hard for them to leave that.
Now, District 1, a fairly good chunk of District 1 includes the downtown area on the west side. Tell us about what you believe the current state of the downtown is first. And then if you would follow that up with, what is your vision for the downtown of our city?
Well, that's a difficult question.
Yeah.
And you're right, part of the west side of the downtown area is in District 1. The current state seems to be the same it's been for several years. We have the Trading Post specifically, that store opened a few years ago, I believe. Unfortunately, I don't know how business has been for them, but that's good, having a business move into that area.
Yeah.
There is still some unused space, I believe. Currently, the city tore a building down there by right by the courthouse, actually.
Just across the Jackson Street Bridge on the east side there.
Correct. Correct. And of course, the riverfront project, that's extremely hot topic right now because of the price involved. And the taxpayers don't know where the money is going to come from. I don't know where the money is going to come from either. I do want to be clear, I'm not resistant to the riverfront project, but it would have to make sense for me to support implementing it.
So let's, just a follow-up question about that downtown area. Is that something that you really want to see a focus on development, an area of development, or would it be more natural to develop our city in another way?
Well, going back a few questions, I think the jobs question that everyone keeps talking about probably is more important right now.
Okay.
Of course, making your city look better, beautifying it, if you will. Assuming we could just do it with no cost, I don't think anyone would not think that's a good idea. We want people to come here. We want people to visit here. Not necessarily just a place for residents to go. So I think I think the city right now is looking into these things, and I think that's a positive. But my personal priority would be industry if we could somehow make that work.
Okay. There's been a lot in the news about the water crisis that's going on in Flint, Michigan. Who knows? That might be a story that replicates itself. I hope not, but it might be. It makes residents concerned about infrastructure, whether it's the safety of their water supply or what have you. But we hear all these stories about aging infrastructure in our cities. As an older person, talk to us about what you would do for us as residents to feel secure in our infrastructure, whether it be water supply or whether it be some of the other vital services that we have. But just talk about that in difficult budget times. Aging infrastructure, how do you keep the public safe?
Well, and that comes down to spending money where it's needed, where it's necessary. I think the Waterworks and Lighting Commission, I've never had a problem with my water. It's always been really good. But if there's an issue that's brought up by an engineer or whoever, you're gonna have to cut non-essential spending to make sure that those problems are corrected. So going way back, if I can do that.
Please.
You know, if it was a question between the pool project, which I do support, or making sure that we have, you know, clean water, power, roads that are able to be driven on with a regular vehicle, the infrastructure is more important, in my opinion, where to spend money. I'm not going to give a non-committal answer on that because I think people need to know where I stand. So.
Okay, wonderful. Talk about communication. You're elected, April 5th, you're elected District 1 alderperson. You step into that role the morning of April 6th. Talk about communication with the mayor, communication with other alderpersons, with city department heads, but just talk about how you see healthy communication from that role as an alderperson.
Well, for me specifically, of course, to the people in my ward or even any resident of the city, I'm going to be available. Our phone numbers and a email address, city email address, are listed for all the aldermen. You can call them at any time. My personal number will be listed. I have that phone generally with me 24/7, so I'll be easily in contact should I be elected. Communication with other elected officials is extremely important. Again, I'm not here with any eccentric ideas or trying to cause waves or anything. I just want to make my decisions in a way that makes sense, and that means talking your differences out rather than just trying to talk over somebody perhaps or not considering their side of things.
As someone in my season of life, I see a young person like yourself desiring to get involved, and that's really encouraging to me. I would really like for you to share with our viewers on River City's Community Access Media your vision for this city. I want you to look ahead and see your kids growing up and living and raising their families in the city. What's your vision long-term for Wisconsin Rapids?
Well, long-term, I would like to watch my children or grandchildren grow up and know that if they choose to stay local, that there's going to be jobs available for them. That the crime rate is not going to be excessively high. It's not in the city, in my opinion. We do have issues, of course, but I think our police department and public safety is doing a really good job.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to share about looking forward?
Just if I'm in an alderman position, I'm going to make decisions based on what logic I have, and just look beyond step 2 or 3 and try to look way down the road.
Okay, wonderful. Let's move down to District 1. We've talked about the city as a whole. let's kind of drill into District 1. What do you think the biggest issue in the district that you live in and are running to represent is?
Well, a lot of steps have already been made. In the past, the cleanup project under our former alderperson, while he was alderperson anyway, was initiated. Neighborhood Watch, I noticed when the signs went up in the area. Some of the residents on my side of town didn't like junk sitting in yards, yards not being taken care of. In some cases, it was maybe an elderly person that didn't have anyone to take care of that for them, and there is a day a year where you can volunteer to take care of other people's yards for them. I think those are some of the major issues on our side of town. We of course have the industrial park, and that's a big area that there's businesses back there, and I'd like to see them continue to do very well. But there's also land that we can fill with other businesses. But the biggest issue, I think, would be our infrastructure. Back to that again, of course,
Right.
and the projects, keeping the west side looking nice.
I'm struck by the fact that Wisconsin Rapids is not the only city that's looking to grow economically. Every city
Certainly
is.
not.
And so you get a business that's looking to expand and provide some opportunities. That has got to be such a competitive environment to win that business to your city. Are there any things in specific you take to the table, Joe, about filling some of that land in the industrial park? What's a proper level of incentive to bring business here?
Well, I'm not a economic guru, but I think things such as taxes, if you can maybe keep them down. I might be wrong on this, but I believe when Tractor Supply came in, there was some sort of arrangement with the city pertaining to property taxes. I don't know the specifics of that, but I recall reading about that. Things like that, trying to be proactive, going out there and actually, looking at what other cities are doing that's working, and maybe consider doing those types of things here. I'm not saying those aren't being done.
Right.
I'm sure our current officials are doing things like that, but.
We touched on this a bit earlier, but let's talk just a little bit more about communication with your constituents. Give me I know as a constituent what I would like to have from an older person. Put it the other way. How do you want to hear from your constituents? What do you want to hear from them? How do you want them to share how they feel about things with you?
Well, one thing I notice in my profession especially is people tend to give feedback when it's negative or when they feel like maybe they haven't been treated fairly. I would like to hear the other side once in a while. If an issue is coming up and someone feels very strongly one way or the other, I would encourage them contacting me and telling me, hey, I support this, I don't support this. Why don't you guys look at this? Can you explain to me why this hasn't been brought up? Because if our elected officials don't hear from people, they're not going to know the way their constituents feel. So that to me is important. I would want to be contacted. I'm not the kind of person who's going to make people feel like they're bothering me or anything like that. I'm very approachable. As you can tell, I'm very talkative. So I encourage them to reach out, let me know how they feel. If I disagree, I'll explain why.
Okay, so here's your chance for any voter of District 1 in Wisconsin Rapids that watches the program as it airs on the YouTube channel, online, on demand, on the air, on the cable systems. Why should we vote for Joe Zurfluh on Tuesday, April 5th for District 1 alderperson?
Well, like I said, I don't bring any grand ideas that are going to shake things up. I'm not looking to turn City Hall upside down. I'm looking very forward to going out of my way, working with the other aldermen, the mayor, department heads, other agencies within the city. I'm going to remain very approachable, like we have already discussed a few times, but I think that especially I hear people not necessarily complain about, but say, hey, I wish so-and-so would have called me back, or, I try to get a hold of him and he doesn't return calls. Neighbor of mine commented that an alderman came out once and looked at the problem he was discussing regarding some road construction. So little things like that, not just trying to be in the job for the title or for anything like that, but my heart is in the right place. I'm doing this because I have a legitimate interest in local government, and I just ask people to consider voting for me.
So what I've heard over the course of our time together in conversation is that you love the city in which you live, you have a concern for it, and that if elected, you'll bring a reasonable approach to government in a cooperative environment. Have I heard you right over the course of our conversation?
Absolutely. That's a very good assessment, and especially in a nonpartisan position, I think cooperation and trying to work things out is very important.
Thank you for your time today, Joe.
Well, thank you, sir.
On Tuesday, April the 5th, the ballot in District 1 will have the appointed incumbent Lee Tao against Joe Zurfluh, and the citizens of Wisconsin Rapids will make the choice that day. We want to thank you for joining us on Get to Know Your City right here on River City's Community Access Media. We hope that you'll join us for another edition very, very soon. I'm Milt Van Natta. Thanks for being with us.